Here we go. These three beautiful individuals are going to tell you a bit about themselves. So for the next 45 minutes, we're hopefully going to illuminate you with all your queries and questions around visas. We've got some experts here to support those questions. I'm not an expert on visas, absolutely not, but I'm here to support the rest of the journey. So if I haven't spoken to you already, my name's Rowan. I'm based in Copenhagen in Denmark, and I'm supporting mainly European-based educators, but any educator travelling. I work with a team that's based around the world, from Canada, Ireland, UK, New Zealand, Australia, all over, supporting travelling educators in all kinds of directions to the UK, to Australia. But today is about Australia. That's what Darren and Sue, that's their skill set, is in Australian-bound visas. And what we will do is, following today's webinar, everyone will get the recording. It might not be straight away. We'll pretty it up for you. But we'll send it out, and you can share it with your friends and family as well and rewatch it. And there'll also be a link in there with Darren's consultation URL. So if you wish to schedule some time with Darren or his team, you are certainly able to do that and have a one-to-one around your circumstances. So that's me. In a nutshell, I'm a teacher as well, and I've travelled and taught around Australia, UK, and Sweden, so I know what it's like to relocate as a teacher. But I'm going to handball over to Darren and Sue now to get them to tell you a bit about themselves.
Want me to go first, Sue?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Well, thank you for attending, and thank you, Rowan and Angie Kay, for allowing Sue and me to present today. Today is really about just answering any questions that you have about the visa process and how to get to Australia. Sue is our senior case processor. She works on all our teacher skilled visas. I do all the 482 employee sponsored visas. So any questions about those, and even the working holiday conditions, feel free to ask away. I've been a registered migration agent with the Australian government now for over 20 years. I spent the last 15 years working in our office in Edinburgh, and the last 5 years I've been working in the Perth office. So I have a really good understanding of the UK and Irish market migrating to Australia, and also have a good explanation or a good experience about employee sponsorship and 482s, obviously working in Australia for the last 5 years as well. So don't leave the seminar with any questions. Make sure you ask them all, and we're here to help you out and guide you on your way to Australia. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm Sue. I'm based in London, and I specialise in skilled visas for Visa Goes, so skill assessments, state sponsorship, and the visa process. So really start to finish on skilled migration. I have 30 years experience in the industry, working both in the US for Australian immigration, and then back in London as a migration specialist for Visa Go. So yeah, a lot of experience and a long time in the industry.
Fantastic. So if you do have questions that we don't cover in the session, just put them in the chat. And I think Sue and Darren also have access to the chat box, so you'll be able to see what flies in, hopefully. But if you don't, I'll look at it and I'll share them. So today, I'll give you a brief introduction to ANZ UK and some of the reasons why people move abroad, I guess, which is varied. And then we'll go through the steps in your journey, the differences between the visas. Sue and Darren can unpack that with you from the working holidays through to the sponsorship and the skilled visas. And then I'll talk a bit more about the schools that ANZ UK support across Australia and early childhood settings, and all the other stuff that we provide around your adventure. It's not just about the job, right? It's also about the journey, the adventure, the fun stuff, the travel, the accommodation, that pastoral stuff. So I'll tell you how we can support you around that too. So brief introduction. We're not a new business. We're quite an established business. Over 20 years, we've got offices around the world. As I said, supporting lots and lots of travelling educators. I think we supported 1,200 educators travelling across the globe last year, from graduates to experienced educators, some going on working holiday visas, others looking to settle in Australia, as an example, travelling with families, travelling with partners, travelling with dogs, travelling with cats. So it's such a unique or very varied market in education. So lots of different types of teachers in different parts of their career looking for our support and advice. And many of those educators, I'm sure, Visa Go have supported along the way too. Our brand promise, you know, we have a set of core values that we live and breathe by. I'm not going to go through each of them right now, but it's all about exceptional experiences and placing the right educator in the right school or setting at the right time. So we'll unpack your circumstances with you. You might be thinking about temp work, substitute work, contracts, permanent opportunities, special needs, all types of schools, all types of settings that will tailor make, will unpack your story, your preferences with you one-on-one. So you will have your own consultant. It might be me, it might be someone else, and you'll also have another consultant in Australia supporting you. So you're well and truly covered. So, as I said, some of the visas we'll be talking about today are ranging from the working holiday visa, which some of you are eligible for and some of you may not be. And some of you might be considering multiple visas that cross across some of these, or 2 or 3 of these, perhaps. So Darren and Sue are best placed to answer some of those questions. So we'll kick off with probably one of the ones that we see most of our educators travelling on, particularly from Commonwealth countries.
Yeah, so the working holiday 417, or some countries also the 462, depending on your passport. The pros, obviously, is you can get to Australia, you can go online, apply for the visa. Sometimes they're automatically granted within an hour. Sometimes they may take 3 or 4 days. It allows you to travel. And once you enter Australia, your 12 months starts. And there's less commitments and it's less expensive. The cons are well, for the Irish, you have to do your 88 days or your regional work, or 6 months if you're doing your 2nd or 3rd year working holiday visa. For those who have UK passports, really have the 3 years straight through. The only thing that we're sort of coming up against is a lot of people are saying, well, how do we get rid of that 6-month work restriction in every year of the working holiday visa? Unfortunately, you can't get rid of that unless you maybe apply for another visa, maybe a skilled visa or a 482. If you apply for another visa, then you continue to work with that school if you're working there, if you want to extend that 6 month. Less desirable for employers. I mean, Ryan, what's ANZ UK look on employers when you're placing teachers? Is there a good receptive for people on 417s, or does the employer want them to have a more permanent visa?
Yeah, it's kind of mixed. We've got, so what Darren was saying before, one of the restrictions is, yes, you can work and live for 12 months as a minimum, but you can only work for one school for 6 months, and then you must change employer, which is a real pain. But some schools are willing to take on 6-month contracts. And then there's 2 schools up in Brisbane, actually, or on the Gold Coast, where they just literally say, you take these guys for 6 months at your school and then flip-flop, and we'll take them for the second 6 months. And then if they have a second year, if they're a British passport holder, a second year visa, they can actually stay at that school, right, Darren, because it's a new visa, and therefore they could be 12 months at that one school over 2 years.
Yeah, correct, Ryan. So if you time it well and you use the last 6 months in your first year, you can then use the first 6 months in your second year and effectively work 1 year with the same school. The 417 is a fantastic visa to get you out into Australia, and Sue will talk about onshore and offshore skilled visa applications a little bit later on. But it gets you out to Australia, it gets you in the workplace. But if you're moving to Australia and your long-term strategy is to stay permanently, then really consider seriously before you head out on the 417 on getting your skills assessment done through AITSL and your English language test. And then that sets you up to be able to lodge your expression of interest just before you head off to Australia or when you're actually in Australia. So it's always good to get that part of the application done, because that can probably take 5 to 6 months. You don't want to be in Australia and waste 5 to 6 months and then be stressing about getting an invite, which could be another 5 to 6 months or maybe a year. And some nationalities, obviously, as it says there, can claim Medicare as well.
Yeah. So the only nationalities on the 417 that don't need to do the specified work are the British passport holders, right, Darren? Every other nationality, they'd have to do the 88 days.
Yeah, correct.
And some of those nationalities do have access to Medicare. Not every one of them. So that's the healthcare system in Australia. In case you're wondering, it's it's access to the national healthcare system. But only some countries would have access to that. Others would have to get their own health sorted.
Be mainly those that have got reciprocal rights with Australia.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, the skill shortage visa 482. This has become so popular. Rowan has referred some schools to us who have been set up as standard business sponsors, and they're actively seeking and sponsoring primary, secondary, early years, special needs teachers. Now, the 482, it can be anywhere from 2 years up to 4 years. And this is a good platform for teachers who aren't too sure. You can get into a job, have a steady income, and then at the end of the 2-year period, if you enjoy the workplace environment and the employer is loving the way that you teach, you can then apply to a 186, which is permanent residency. And then you bypass the skills assessment because you've already worked 2 years in the 482. So it could be a good stepping stone visa for those people that aren't too sure or haven't maybe got the funds to apply for a skilled visa. So we're finding it very popular, and we are finding schools are looking to sponsor teachers due to the shortages in Australia. And the pros are, yes, it is cheaper than a skilled visa. You'll find the majority of employers will pay the government fees. The only fee that you really need to probably pay is the Australian government lodgement fee, which is 3,115 Australian dollars, your medical and maybe a criminal. The processing times, we were getting those processed in 4 to 6 weeks, but that has blown out with the new changes that the Australian government recently implemented. That's now taking anywhere between 3 to 5 months for a 482. So the time frame is a little bit longer than it was maybe 4 or 5 months. The other benefit is there's no age restriction on a 482. You can be 46, 50, and still go out to Australia and have a 4-year visa and work as a teacher. The only issue then is because you're over 45, your PR, permanent residency, being able to stay in Australia will be limited. You may have to look at some schools in Dharma areas which have got age restrictions if you're looking for a permanent residency after the 482. The cons, we're finding a school to sponsor. We've probably got about half a dozen schools at the moment, and they all work with ANZ UK. So have a chat to Rowan, see how those schools are, see if they need any teachers and see any sponsorships available. Work restricted to that school for 2 to 4 years. Well, yeah, the new rules have changed. So where it's changed is if you're on a 482, you used to only have 60 to 90 days to find a new sponsor if you wanted to leave or you were laid off. The Australian government has now increased that to 6 months. So technically, if you're sponsored by a 482 school, you've got 6 months to move around to try and find another sponsor. And you don't even have to work as a teacher now. So the restrictions have become very flexible to allow 482 visa holders to find new sponsors. You're not eligible for government subsidies, Medicare, childcare. You'll also pay a higher tax rate on 482 because you're only a temporary resident. Must have at least 2 years full-time teaching experience. Sometimes that's a requirement of the employer. It used to be a visa requirement, but under the new rules, you only need to have now 12 months in the last 5 years, not the 2 years. So that's a bonus for those people looking to go out on the 482 visa.
Yep. I guess it is a great route, and obviously the employer pays a lot of that cost, as Darren has explained. But what I will tell you is a lot of these schools that have the license to sponsor are still wanting to see the teacher in person before they commit to it, which you go, but hold on, but how am I going to get there? And it's like, well, okay, maybe you start on a working holiday visa if you're eligible for that. And then sponsorship can happen easier after that because you're there in person. You can impress them and get exposure to their school and make sure you're aligned with the staff. There are only a few principals that would consider interviewing via Skype or via Teams. So it is a really difficult way to get in. It is doable, but the stars have to align. We have to have a school that has a license, that has a vacancy that aligns with your skill set and your availability too. And they have to be prepared to offer you a contract remotely you know, it's typically STEM teachers, you know, those science, technology, English and maths. So, you know, when people that come to me and say, that's what I want, that's what I'm going to do, I say, well, it's, you know, it's a long shot in a lot of ways because we don't have a lot of schools on our books that are prepared to do that yet. So that's why we'd have that conversation about a skilled visa as a more not guaranteed, but more likely that you'll get working rights and the ability to work in Australia. So I'm not throwing cold water on it, but I'm just saying it is not a given. It's certainly not a given. We've got to have the right relationship with the school, and the stars do have to align around your availability, their vacancy, and what the skill set they're looking to fill is. So I'd never just solely rely on sponsorship. The teachers that have been sponsored in the past have typically got history with that school, or are special needs, or are maths or science teachers, typically.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, good
interesting.
point, Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well. A lot of our skilled clients who have put EOIs in, some of them for 189s, but also for state sponsorship, primarily in Victoria. You know, they sit in Skill Select for, you know, a period of time, probably longer than they'd like to think that they're going to be sitting there waiting for an invite. And quite a few of them, especially in the last 6 months, have found employment through schools in Victoria. They get sponsored on their 482, they go down, and then we can change their EOI to say that they're living in the state. And that just opens up so many doors because, and again, especially with Victoria, that's what I've seen so far. You're more of an asset. You're already in the state, so they're happy to sponsor you. So a lot of these clients, especially the ones where they're close to turning 45, they're better off going down on the 482, getting sponsored for the 190 or the 491, depending on where they are. And then that gives them the permanent visa, and there's no concern then with turning 45 and not being eligible for a permanent stay on the 482, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So,
I think
yeah.
we definitely have more schools. Well, we had an agreement with the Victorian Education Department around an international teacher relocation program with schools in regional Victoria. So that's where a lot of our sponsorship has happened with those public schools in that space. But I guess it could be anywhere really in Australia if they have a license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the 417 and maybe the 462 are good visas to get the teachers into Australia and working in that environment. Then the sponsorship opens up, like you said earlier. So, like you said, some people may be applying for 3 different visas. And on that point, you can have 2, 3 visa applications, you know, running at the same time. So you can be on Australia on a 417. You can then be sponsored or have an application for 482. That is then granted, which cancels the 417. And in the background, you can also be having a 190 or a 189 skilled visa sitting in the background as well. So you may want to look at those options.
Yep.
Okay, so the skilled visa, the 189 and the 190, I mean, this obviously for employment purposes is the best visa because there's no restrictions. Rowan can present you to a school and say, hey, this person's got permanent residency, there's no restrictions on their work, etc., full work rights. And then once you've been in Australia for 4 years on either of these 2 visas, you can apply for citizenship and you also get Medicare. I suppose the cons, expensive, yes. But look, you're getting permanent residency and the opportunity to live in Australia and then get Australian citizenship. So if you weigh that up, it's not too bad. Long waiting times, Sue will touch on this, but we have found that since teachers have not been given priority processing, timeframes for 189s has blown out. And also the state sponsorships, depending on which state you want to go to, the processing times may be a bit longer, or they may not even be inviting. I mean, and it's not guaranteed. So the last time the Australian government did an invite for 189s was on the 7th of November 24. So it's starting to get up to about 6 months before, since the last invite. Now we're in an election at the moment too, so nothing's going to happen for the next month. So if it's another 2 to 3 months before another invitation round, it means you could be waiting 8 or 9 months for a 189 invite. So that means that the 190 is more desirable because you can go to the state and ask them. I mean, how are you finding the state governments at the moment, Sue? Who's sort of the ones that are issuing a lot of invites, and what's the waiting times around those?
Yeah, I mean, just in my experience with teachers, the only states I'm seeing invitations for offshore clients, so people outside of Australia, is Victoria. Although I did have one last week for Queensland for a secondary school teacher, 491. She was on very high points. She had 100 points. And I think that's probably why she got an invite. And her EOI had only been in the system for a week. So
Wow.
that's,
Okay.
yeah, pretty unbelievable because you don't get many invites for Queensland as a whole. I've even got clients living in Queensland, not teachers, but living in Queensland who haven't had invites. But primarily we're still seeing Victoria being the biggest state, I guess, that's inviting teachers, and across the board, primary teachers as well as secondary and early years. I had one yesterday for an early years teacher. What points did she have? She had 85 points. But again, I'm seeing a difference as well with Victoria. They only seem to be offering invites to offshore applicants if you're applying for a 491. So
Okay.
they want to, encourage you to live in the regional areas.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And just so you understand, the 189 is for those occupations on the MLTSL. If you're a primary school teacher, then you have to be state sponsored because you're not on the main list. So if you're on the main list, you can apply for a 189. If you're not, you then need to apply for state sponsorship, which is either the 190, which is a permanent residency, or the 5-year temporary, which is the 491, which Sue was just talking about then, with that teacher getting an invite with the Queensland government. And just to let you know, the last invitation round on the 189, secondary school teachers were invited on 70 points, early year teachers were on 70 points, and special need teachers needed 75 points. So your points really have to be up quite high to be receiving invites.
And when Sue and Darren talk about this, in case people are wondering what the points mean, these are the steps. So basically, you have to find out is my teaching, or the type of teacher I am and is qualified to teach, am I on the list? And what kind of points do I need to actually before I can even submit an expression of interest? And there's a calculator, and it'll ask your age, it'll ask your qualifications, it'll ask about finances, it'll ask about a bunch of questions, and it'll all spit out a result at the bottom. It'll say, out of 100 points, whatever it is, this is how many you have, which is or is not the minimum you are required before you can proceed. Is that right, Darren?
Yeah, correct. So, I mean, to lodge an expression of interest, you need a minimum of 65 points. And the main core curriculum is age, qualifications, language, and work experience. So they're the 4 main areas that you need to check out. You can also claim 5 bonus points for your partner's English, or if they're skilled as well, do a skills assessment. And the big points come in, say, for state sponsorship, 190 gives you an extra 5 bonus, or a 491 regional gives you 15 points. So, yeah, so the first thing is to make sure that you're on the skilled occupations list. All the major teacher categories are on the main list for the 189. The only one that's not is the primary school. So you need state sponsorship. Calculate your points. You can go onto our website, submit an application. We check your points and send you out information on if you are eligible or not. So you've got that access, or the Australian government website has a points calculator. And then you need to get your skills assessment done through AITSL. And there's a bit of a criteria for that. You need to have a minimum of 4 years at degree level. Most of the teachers have either got a degree in a 12-month PGCE or a 4-year Bachelor of Education. If you're a teacher and you've only got a 3-year degree, then unfortunately you won't be eligible because of that 4-year rule. And also, it depends on your passport. You have to pass the IELTS English exam academic as well. So Sue, is there any glaring tips that you've got for the skills assessment or the English language for the skills assessment?
I mean, if you don't need to sit the English exam if you completed your qualifications. It's nothing to do with your passport. It's where you completed your qualification, and especially where you completed your initial teacher education qualification. So, as you said, Darren, some applicants will have a 3-year degree in, could be in anything, history, maths, and then they'll have a 1-year PGCE in secondary or primary education. So the ITE, the teaching qualification, must have been completed in a English-speaking country, and your supervised teaching practice must also have been completed in a school where English was the first language. If you completed your qualification in a country where it's not one of those 6 countries, then you must sit the academic IELTS test. They won't accept the PTE or any other English exam. And that's really important to know, because obviously for skilled language points, you can complete a PTE or an OTE, but for the AITSL, they'll only accept IELTS, and it must be the academic. Although they have now said, they've sort of come in line with the immigration department, where you can sit the one skill retake if you miss out on one element of the test only. So if, for instance, you get all the marks that you need in 3 subjects, but then in listening you fall down by half a point or 1 point, you can sit the one skill retake, and if that gives you the points you need, then you can submit the second test you've taken. So that's important to know. Other than that, really, it's sort of just getting your qualifications together. There's no work experience requirement for the teaching assessment. You can have your work experience assessed, but most people don't. There's really, it's unnecessary unless a state government or immigration ask for it later. So it's primarily just based on your qualifications, which, as you say, could be, you have to have 4 years in total. It could be a diploma level for your non-teaching qualification, and then the PGCE or a graduate diploma in education, as long as you've got the equivalent of an AQF, I think it's diploma level 7, but 4 years in total.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, sir. So once you've got your skills assessment done, depending on your passport, you may not have to do the English test, but 99% of our clients do the English test, and the reason is you need bonus points. As you can see, it's very competitive to be invited for a visa. So if you don't do the English test, you'll get 0 points. So you have to have a minimum of 65 to submit your expression of interest to the Australian government. So just for an example, if you're a 30-year-old secondary school teacher, for your age, you could claim 30 points. Your qualifications, your degree in your PGCE, you can claim 15. If you don't do the English exam, you get 0. For work experience, you say you've worked 3 years in the last 10, you get 5. And if you're single, you get a bonus of 10. So that means you've got 30, 40, 50, 60 points. So it means you're not eligible to apply for a 189. So there's no point doing the expression of interest. So then what you would do is go do the English test and hopefully get 7s in the IELTS general exam, and that would give you a bonus of 10 points, and that would bring you up to 70 for a 189. So then you would submit your expression of interest. You can also get bonus points for state sponsorship as well if you didn't want to do the English test, but I strongly suggest that you sit it and make sure you do the free test papers on the website and do some study before you sit the test, because it's not straightforward. Once you've lodged the expression of interest, which is free, you then wait for your invitation. And as I said earlier, the last invitation for 189s was on the 7th of November. So we're still not sure when the Australian government is going to do the next invitational round. So you may want to look at state sponsorship to speed up the process, because once you get your state sponsorship approved, that state government will then ask the Australian government to invite you to apply for the visa. So that's what you're really trying to do, is get that invite.
Yeah. And so this is a really important piece. I think we have another slide about it. I haven't been giving the best information around it, but if I'm an educator on a working holiday visa, I'm eligible for a working holiday visa, but I want to stay longer than a year and I don't want to do the specified 88 days of work to extend my visa. I'm very interested in a skilled visa. That sounds like the most likely pathway for me. Would you advise those applicants to do the steps 1 through 3 before they leave their home country, before they actually enter Australia and start their working holiday visa? So they have all that stuff already. They have their points, they've got their skills assessment, and they may or may not have submitted their expression of interest. But I think you said you could do that when you arrive as well, Darren. Is that what you would advise?
Yeah, I was discussing this with Sue earlier. The sooner you get the skills assessment, the English language ready, it's saving you time to do it before you actually come to Australia. And you can lodge it before you leave, or you can lodge it when you get to Australia. The benefit of being in Australia and you've lodged your expression of interest, as soon as you get an invite to apply, and then you apply and pay for your visa, you then go on to a bridging visa. And that allows you to stay in Australia until a decision is made on that visa. So if you're on a working holiday and you've got that 6-month criteria, if you apply for another visa, you can continue to work with that one employer. So there's some benefits in that, being able to stay with that employer. And also it prepares you, and you're not going to run out of time. The amount of times that we see people on their 3rd year working holiday visa, or their first from a different country, say Spain, and they haven't done their regional work and they've got 3 weeks to apply for a skilled visa, it's impossible, because it takes 4 to 5 months to get it prepared. So do the groundwork first, and it'll put you in a great position later on down the track.
Good advice. So I guess this is the website that people need to look at for that profession.
Yeah, well, that's the 190 skilled nominated visa. So that's the state sponsorship. So, I mean, yeah, the skilled list is, if you just Google skilled occupations list, and the Australian government website will come up. And then you have the drop down box, and down further you can actually type in your occupation, and it'll actually give you all the visa categories that you're eligible for, the costs of the visas, etc. It's really good. So just go, onto the Home Affairs website and look under skilled occupations list, and you'll see what list you're on. Most of the teachers are all on the main list. It's only primary school teachers that's on the secondary that need state sponsorship.
Yeah,
the point calculator is great, because you just go in there, you type your age, your qualifications, your English language. A lot of people automatically allocate 20 points because they've got a UK passport. No, you have to do the English test. No English test and results, then you can't claim points, you get 0. So it's quite important. And then your work experience. Another point Sue brought up earlier was that if you're in the UK on a working holiday visa and you've been working as a teacher for 2 years and 11 months, you would stay in the UK and get your 3 years, because 3 years of work experience in the UK gives you a bonus of 5 points on work experience. Don't go to Australia and waste that month. Try and get as many points as you can, because when you're in Australia, you have to work for a year full time to get 5 points. So just be wary about the work experience points as well. And 5 years will give you 10 points, and 8 years will give you 15 points. Also, if you're single, you get a bonus of 10 points. If you have a partner and your partner's also from an English-speaking country, you can automatically get 5 points. Or if they do a skills assessment in the same skilled occupation list, you can get a bonus of 5. So just run through your points and make sure that you've got enough points, and also make sure that you don't shoot yourself in the foot by leaving the country that you live in. Get your work experience maxed out if you're close to it.
Yeah.
So Sue, do you want to cover this one because you do the all the skills assessments?
Yeah, so AITSL handles all of the skill assessments for teachers other than early years, which has now moved over to another skill assessing authority. Haven't really had a chance to even look at that yet because it's only just happened, but it is a lot more detailed, a lot more complex. But the main teaching the main teaching, excuse me, the main teaching occupations are all assessed by the AITSL. Processing times have increased since around December, so you're looking at probably close to the 12-week mark rather than the 8 weeks. Processing times do vary though, but that's what we're looking at. As I said before, 4 years of education that can be made up of diploma and a teaching qualification. The teaching qualification, and this is another thing, and we've actually had a client recently who she wanted a lodget, but we did say to her that it may fail. You must ensure that your 1-year teaching qualification is 12 months full time, and that the transcript confirms that it's a full-time course of 12 months. Sounds as if it, should always be that, but there are some, if you do your training through maybe, oh gosh, I can't think what it's called, Darren.
Skit or
Schools Direct,
Skit
Teach
or
First,
Teach First.
If you do one of those programs, because you're doing it through a provider rather than through the university, sometimes the university will only give you credit for the academic subjects you do within the university. So for, you may be there for 12 months, but because you're doing teaching practice within that 12 months, they won't give you credit for that on your transcript, and they'll only say that you've been at the university on a part-time basis. If you can't get the university to amend the transcript, and again we've seen this on a few occasions, then your application will fail. So it's it's really important that you're aware of that ahead of time, especially if you're on a skit or one of the other training programs outside of a university.
Is it 45 days supervised teacher practice, Sue, that you need? You need a letter from the university as well. Yeah, which is another key one.
Key one. And again, if you're doing it through a skit, the letter cannot be from the training provider. It must be from the university. And it's 45 days. And just needs to state that you're working, that you've been teaching within either a secondary or primary, the age groups, and then confirmation that it's 45 days. And again, I've noticed that the teaching board are picking up on the fact that we have a lot more teachers, especially from the UK, that are going through maybe SKIT or another training program, and they are asking for additional information in that supervised teaching practice letter, confirming that the university require them to complete compulsory supervised teaching practice, and that they supervise, or it's their university lecturers that supervise the teaching practice and not the training provider. And that's become sort of more prevalent, I'd say, in the last 6 months.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
So the expression of interest we've talked about before, you had to have a minimum of 65 points. Just one thing to bring up on that, if you're claiming work experience points 3 years, you need to have detailed employment references. You also need to have bank statements, pay slips, P60s and tax returns to cover that. If you're claiming 1 year, I'd expect to have every third month a pay slip, bank statement and your tax returns. Don't ever claim work experience if you can't back it up, because if you don't back it up and you're invited and you apply, your visa could be refused. So don't ever overclaim in your expression of interest. Yep,
And I
so
would
English
say
exam.
also, sorry.
Yep. Go for it,
I would
Sue.
also
Yep,
say with that with the employment, a lot of people we've picked up EOIs where clients have come to us after lodging their EOI, and they've lodged it based on approximate dates for employment. You know, they haven't been quite sure when they started and when they finished, but they thought, oh, you know, it's around sort of October 2010 to November 2020. I'll use those dates. And then when you see the references, the dates are not correct. So that's really important as well, especially if you're borderline for a claim for work experience. So again, don't put your EOI in until you've actually spoken to each of your companies and you know the exact dates of your employment.
All right. Optional, yeah, English exam, as Sue said earlier. If you're from one of the countries, from English-speaking country, then the IELTS is not required for the skills assessment. But if you're looking to claim English points in your skilled visa, then you will need to do the English exam. If you're doing it for IELTS skills assessment, it must be academic. If you're doing it for points, then you'll get away with general, or you can also do the Pearson's, which some clients inform us that is slightly easier than the IELTS English exam. Cool, and here we are, here's the Pearson's. Right, so yeah, I mean, what's your experience, Sue? Really, you can't use this for the skills assessment, but people prefer this for claiming points for their main skilled visa.
Yeah, I think it's varied actually. I think the beauty with the IELTS is that you can take the one skill retake. So and you can't with the Pearson's. So if you have fallen down just on one section, with Pearson's you'd have to resit it and pay the fee again, and they don't look at remarks. I've never seen, well, not for the last few years anyway, Pearson's PTE consider remarks, or even if they do, they don't up your score. So I must admit, most of my teachers sit the IELTS exam.
IELTS, okay,
yeah.
Excellent.
And if they have to sit the academic for the skill assessment, if they get what they need, then great, they can use that same result for points. But some of them will maybe get 7s across the board, or 8s. Sorry, some of them will get 8s on some sections that they obviously need for the skill assessment, but not enough to get superior points for English. So they'll then resit the IELTS test, but sit the general one for the visa application. So you can do that. So you can sit 2 different tests. And hopefully with the general one, get the points you need.
Yeah, but I think
so. Just sorry, Ron, what was that?
I was just going to say, like, for those people who are from the non-English mother tongue speaking countries, you have to do the academic IELTS, and actually not just for AITSL, but also for state teaching recognition, which is another thing. It's just because you get an approval or a positive outcome from your AITSL assessment doesn't mean you're allowed to teach for that state. There's another hoop you have to jump through, unfortunately. You have to register with the state teaching authority, and they will only recognise academic IELTS. So, and you can do that at any time, and the results will last for 2 years too, which is great. So it's something you can do really early on in the piece, even if you're not arriving from the 12 months, it'll still be valid.
Yeah. And then, yeah, as you say, if you want to then up your points or feel that you can. So if you get 8s and 7s for the academic exam, which meets the criteria for the teaching board, but you fall down, you think you could maybe get 8s across the board for points, then sit the general, because you can then still use the academic one, as you say, Rowan, for registration with the state.
Yeah.
And the other
Yep.
thing too is, it's a lot of people say, "Oh, I've got 8s for my IELTS," because you've got to get 8 in all 4 areas. You
Yeah.
can't use the overall band. So if
It's
you
not the
get
band score.
9997, you haven't got 8s, even though you've got overall 8s. You need to get 8888 to be able to claim 20 points. So
Yeah.
just to clarify that.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait for your invitation. As we said, geez, November, December, January, February, March, April. So it's been 5 months since there's been an invitation around for 189s. It'll probably be another 2 or 3 months. We don't know whether there'll be another invite before the end of the financial year on the 1st of July. And we don't know whether there'll be a lot of skilled visas available, because it's the opposition are talking about cutting visa numbers. So it's probably a good idea to get in sooner than later. So documents I used, yeah, all of these documents here will be required for a skilled visa. And the earlier you get them, the better. So yeah, work experience, employment references, pay slips are usually the ones that take the most. Criminal checks. If you've lived in any country for 12 months in the last 10 years, you'll need a criminal check from that country. And also, yeah, you'll need your history, your travel history, for the application as well. Is there anything there, Sue, that people find hard getting that they should try and concentrate on?
I don't think so. I mean, clients do struggle with some of the questions around travel, because that's, especially in Europe, you travel a lot, you travel over, from the UK to Europe just for a weekend. And until recently, you'd never have a stamp in your passport. So clients do struggle with that. But I think, there are ways around it in how you sort of present it on the application form. Bottom line is, if you think that you have lived or travelled to a particular country for an accumulative period of 12 months over the last 10 years, so if you go to Spain for 6 weeks every summer and you've done that for the last 10 years, and you know that you need a police check from that country, basically. Everything else is achievable. If you don't have some of your P60s from the UK, you can contact National Insurance contributions, you can contact HMRC. So most things you should be able to get. Yeah.
Excellent. Yep, so there's the price breakdown of a skilled visa, skills assessment, English, police check, visa. You don't actually pay for the visa until you're issued an invite, and your medical 500. So yeah, approximately 6,600, which gives you a 5-year permanent residency visa, allows you to live and work anywhere in Australia. And after 4 years, you get Australian citizenship, which is perfect. You can have a UK passport and an Australian passport. What more would you want?
$1,300 a year. So you put it in perspective, it's a lot of money up front, but then you think about whatever that is, €700 per year of living and working in Australia. It's actually quite a good deal. And we're seeing more and more educators considering it. So the prices change yearly, don't they, Darren?
They do. So the 1st of July, there'll probably be an increase for the visa fee. The skills assessment went up recently, so I don't expect that to go up. English exam, police checks, yes. So expect probably anywhere between 3 to 5% increase on the majority of those prices every year.
Right. Okay. All right. I'll quickly run through this and then we'll get into some questions. So we spelt children wrong here, which is a great start.
I like it.
Obviously supporting all types of educators from early childhood, teaching, private, public, independent, Catholic, teaching assistants, other support staff, after school care, and it's also leadership. So it doesn't matter where you are in your journey as a teacher, we're likely to be able to support you across Australia, both regionally and metropolitanly. So, as I said before, you'll have your own dedicated team member that will walk you through, and you'll have another one in Australia to support you, whatever that work preference or state you're looking to get into. And you'll have another team member in one of Darren's team to support you if you wish to have some visa support as well. So I'm not going to bore you to death with the compliance now, but it's a lot less than a skills assessment. I can tell you that what we require. It's pretty painless, and we're free. We don't charge for registration with us at all. And hopefully it's a painless process, and you're working pretty much soon after arrival. So yeah, each story is a bit different, but I'm happy to sit down with you and unpack that one-to-one, or at least someone in my team. Outside of the teaching, really important that you're traveling or living with the same sort of people that are teachers perhaps, or are there for the same sort of reasons. So we connect you online and also in person at pre-departure events if we can do that where you live. Certainly welcome events post-arrival all across the country in Australia. But, once you're in this group, which is 3,000 strong, you can ask questions about anything, about what are you doing Thursday night? Where's a good place to get a beer? What are you doing on the weekend? Should we buy a car together? Who's got a room for rent? All kinds of things like that can be asked within that. So what we've got now is a space for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing screen just so I can just check the inbox in case there are some questions in there. Has anyone put any in the chat? Let me just double check.
Well, I just had a few questions here that were sent in by people who are registering. Ryan, do you want just to quickly run through some of those?
Yeah, good call, Darren. Go for it.
Yeah, well, someone has said, can my partner travel on my visa? Well, for a 417, the answer is no. You've got to each individually apply for your own visa. On a 482 employee sponsored, yes, you can include your partner in that visa, and you can also include your partner in a skilled visa. So when you include your partner, you don't have to necessarily be married. You can also go on de facto evidence. So for a skilled visa, you really need to have 12 months de facto evidence when the visa is lodged. So if you've got about 8 or 9 months, you can start the process, because by the time you're ready to lodge, you'll have the 12 months. Now, evidence is joint bank account, joint rental agreement, joint utility bills, what legal document showing the Australian government that you are a couple living together, and evidence. For the 482, it drops down to 6 months evidence. So if you're in Australia on a 417, you meet someone and you've been living together for 7 months, for a 482, then that's not a problem. So you can include your partner in your visa applications. On here, do I have to do regional work for a skilled visa? Well, I'm assuming that question is more about the 88 days on the 417, where you need to do that to get your second or third year, or 6 months for your third year working holiday. Regional work on a skilled visa, no, not unless you apply for a skilled regional visa, which is a 491. Then you will be restricted to working in a regional area. Got another one here is, do I have to only work in the one school for a skilled visa? The answer is no. Once you get a skilled visa, a 189, a 190, 491, you can work at any employer. You don't even have to teach. So ironically, you get in as a teacher, but you don't have to, although the Australian government would expect you to, because that's your experience, etc. But no, you're not tied to the school. Can I do other jobs on a skilled visa? Yes, certainly. I mean, you may come out to Australia, go to an area that you want to live, say, I don't know, Broome in Western Australia, and there's no teaching jobs. So there's no reason why you can't, pull a few beers in the bar or do other work. You're not restricted on having to teach on a skilled visa. And the one we've already covered, when should I start the visa process? Well, I always say to people, if you want to live in Australia and you want to get out there, why wouldn't you start the process now? Don't wait. If you want to come out on a 417 and your long-term ambitions are to live in Australia permanently, then yeah, get your skills assessment underway, get your English test ready, and get set up so you're organised when you get to Australia. So that was just the few that you sent through to me
Yeah.
earlier on, Ron.
Yeah, no, that was some good ones. I had them written down too. Just to clarify, this is a question for one of the team members we spoke about yesterday. What's the pathway to PR from a 482, the sponsorship, Darren?
Okay, so say you're a, I don't know, a secondary school teacher, you've been sponsored by a school, you're working on a 482 with that school for 6 months. You have got the option of doing the skills assessment, English language, and applying for a 189 skilled visa. Or say you're working and living in Victoria. Sue has already said the Victorian government are quite proactive for sponsorship. So a 190, or if you want to live in a regional area, you can also go for the 491 skilled visa. So there's those options. The other option is the PR through the 186. So at any stage, a school can sponsor a teacher for permanent residency for a 186, which is an employee-sponsored visa. You have to have had 3 years minimum work experience, have a skills assessment, and obviously have a contract with the school for them to sponsor you. The other way is also once you've spent 2 years on a 482 with an employer, you can do a 186 transitional. And what that means is because you spent 2 years on a 482 with an employer, you don't need to do the skills assessment. And that's a little bit of a faster way to get PR on the 186 stream. So there's two, the direct entry, and there's also the transition 186 as well.
Okay. Thank you. We have a question from Karen here. She's just arrived late, unfortunately, and she's, apologies if we've already answered this, but she has a 3-year Bachelor of Education degree, 12 years teaching experience. I suspect she doesn't have a PGCE or one of those, diploma or Masters of Education. Is there any chance that she would get any type of skilled visa at all based on that? Sue, you might be best placed to answer this.
Yeah. Did you say she's got a Bachelor of Education?
So she's from Ireland. She's got a 3-year Bachelor of Education degree, and she's got 12 years experience on top of that. Doesn't say that she has anything. It's in primary teaching,
Primary,
and no other qualifications on top of that. What is it a straight no, or is there an
straight
alternative?
no? Unfortunately, yeah. the minimum criteria for AITSL is that you've got 4 years of university level qualifications. So if she had a 3-year Bachelor of Education and then she, I don't know, went back to uni and did a 2-year diploma in anything, that would give her her 4 years.
Yeah, masters.
Yeah,
I mean, Ryan, what's the
masters.
story?
I mean, it can be anything really, as long as it's university level.
Yeah.
Because they'll look at they'll look at the BEd as being the initial teacher education qualification. So as long as that's at least 1 year full time, and includes 45 days of supervised teaching practice, then that meets the criteria for the teaching qualification.
Okay. Well, she actually has just posted she has a Masters in Education on top of that. So there you go. You've got your 4 years if you've got that, Karen.
Now is eligible.
Look, I have had in the past, and it's kind of been an insult to those educators that have so much experience like Karen and they've studied in a 3-year degree. It's a loophole. It's a long game loophole, but we've seen some success with educators applying through New Zealand. So they apply to be a teacher in New Zealand and get assessed via that process, that authority down there. It doesn't mean you have to go to New Zealand, but we have seen limited success, and it takes like probably 8 to 9 months for all this to happen, and it'll cost about 1,500 Australian dollars. If you get New Zealand approval, then you can apply for Trans-Tasman mutual recognition with a state teaching authority in Australia. They may, there's no guarantee, they may accept that mutual agreement, and then you get registered that way. It's a long way around, and there's no guarantees, and it's a bit of money, but there is that option too.
Brian, have you had any teachers register to teach in Australia with a state licensing board with a 3-year degree?
The short answer is no. But what we
Okay.
see in that, what we have seen in our Facebook group that I mentioned before is two educators with the same degree from the same country outside of Australia, might be a 3-year degree, one getting a straight no and the other one getting through. And we have no rhyme or reason as to why it happens. According to the website, the official website of each state teaching authority, they clearly state you must have 4 years, you must have 45 minimum days. But for whatever reason, whether it was just the person who from that organisation that verified it or whatever, they've got through, which throws up lots of confusion and questions in our group, as you can imagine. But we always refer everyone back to the official governing body, because we're not the boom gate. They are. They have to give you. They are the ones that allow you to teach or not teach in that state.
Yeah.
Brooke here, similar question to previous one. I have a 4-year undergraduate degree from the UK. I did teach first to gain my PGDE, have 4 years teaching experience. So just purely just on the undergraduate degree, it would have to have had initial teacher training included in it, is my understanding. The additional PGDE on top, again, as long as you get a letter from the university saying that you were observed by university lecturers and mentors, it should be okay, Brooke. That would be the crux of your application, though. You'd have to have had that been observed by someone at the university, and for them to write a letter for you before you could apply.
Yeah, and for the letter to also say that it's a compulsory requirement for the university to grant the qualification based on them completing the 45 days, because the program's structured by Teach First. AITSL wants confirmation from the university that yes, their requirement is compulsory supervised teaching practice of at least 45 days, and that applicant has completed that and supervised by a university mentor.
Yep. A final question from Saffron. She has a 3-year English degree, a PGCE on top of that, and is QTS qualified. She's finishing a PGDE this academic year. She's wondering if Australia placed value on the PGDE, and if so, which visa would be best for her situation?
I mean, if she has a PGCE and it's 12 months full time and it included 45 days of supervised teaching practice, and she has the 3-year undergrad degree, that meets AITSL criteria. She doesn't necessarily need the PGDE on top of that. It doesn't add any extra weight. It doesn't, it's not considered preferable in terms of the skill assessment. Obviously, I can't talk about what a school might prefer. But in terms of the skill assessment, all she needs is that she's got the 3-year degree, she's got a PGCE, and as long as it's 12 months full time, and she has the 45 days. The best visa, it really depends on her points score. If she's got 65 points, as long as she's not a primary school teacher, did she say what her?
She hasn't said. So if she's a primary school teacher, her visa options would be state-sponsored 190, which is the 5-year permanent. Oh, she's a secondary school teacher.
Secondary school.
So yeah. Look, if you've got 70 points, that was the last points score that you needed in November for a 189 from the Australian government. That's your best visa, because it's a 5-year permanent residency visa, and it's not linking you into any state sponsorship requirements. Or if you haven't got the points, you can go 190. Or if you haven't got the points and you want bonus and want to go regional, you can do 491, which is the 5-year temporary. But I'd be going for the 189 visa. That's the best option.
I read on I looked at the processing times on the immigration website. I look at it every now and then because I'm always curious, but it looked like the 189, 90% of applications were being processed within 4 months. Would that be the quickest route? Like for school visas, like Yeah.
I think those timeframes seem to have expanded before December, I would say yes. Some of my 189 and even 190 teachers had their visas granted within 6 to 8 weeks. It was so quick. I've now got teachers that were lodged in December for both 189 and 190s. We front end loaded, meaning that they've completed their medicals and their police checks, and they haven't been allocated a case officer yet. So things are slowing down. I don't know, Darren. Do you think it's because we're coming up to the end of the financial year? Maybe they're close to reaching their quota of visas, so they're spacing things out a little bit more, which they tend to do. I don't. It's hard to know, isn't it? You can only go on what you see.
Yeah, you're lodging and seeing all the skilled visas. I can sort of only speak on the employee-sponsored 482 and 186. The 482s have trebled in processing times. You've gone from a month, basically, to 3, 4 months, 5 months. The 186 was being processed within 4 to 5 months. That's now well over a year to 14 months. But that's got to do with the Australian government changing 3 years work experience requirement for a 186 down to 2. So you had about 20,000 applications all go, wow, I'm eligible now, boom. So that's what's happened in that space. The processing times in general are all getting pushed out. Purely because of the volume of applications. We're in election year. The visa quotas are all being cut. They may get cut again. So there's no time like the present if you're looking to get a visa is to get in and get it lodged sooner rather than later, because I don't know about you, but it's getting very tight to get skilled visas at the moment. And it seems to be a trend that's been going probably for 4 or 5 years now. It hasn't swung back the other way yet. I don't think it will swing for another year or two yet.
Okay.
No.
All right. Well, that's even more reason more urgency around getting your getting to that points calculator as a starting point, and just making sure you get the points and get the skills assessment done. We're gonna call it there, I think. Thank you so much again, Sue and Darren, for your expert advice and guidance. It's always a pleasure co-hosting with you guys. I will, as I said, I will follow up with an email and the video recording of this webinar that you feel free to share with everyone. It'll have Darren's consultation link included in that too. And I really strongly advise you all to reach out and book some time in with him and his team, because each case is different. Every one of you is different and has a different journey and pathway. And we'll look after the job. You don't need to worry about that. The visa rights is what these guys will look after for you. Once you get that, everything is easier. Believe me. But yes, thanks again. I really appreciate everyone giving up their time, whether you're watching or co-hosting, and looking forward to making that adventure a reality for everyone out there.
Thank you very much,
thanks,
everyone, for attending, and thank you, Ryan, for having us as guests. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks,
Fantastic.
guys. Thanks, Ryan.
Take care, everyone out there. Stay
Take
well.
care.
Good.